Today on Call for Two, the best kept secret in tabletop detective board gaming. Free Sherlock Holmes consulting detective fan cases. What makes these print and play expansions so unique, and are they right for you? Stay tuned to find out. Some preliminaries first. What exactly is Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective? Well, it's probably the most pure detective mystery game there is. There's no luck, no time limits, no dice. It's purely cooperative. 90% of your time is reading, thinking, and debating. The components of the box, and there are several boxes you can get, include rulebook, a big giant map. You can see my table is actually a neoprene custom printed map. But we've got generally a map. We've got a directory of people and businesses. And then each of the new reprinted box comes with 10 cases, each in their own booklet, typically each with a newspaper of stories that may or may not be related to your case, and then a booklet of locations with clues that you read when you visit each location. The mechanics are quite straightforward. You read an introduction that sets up a mystery, and then you spend your time deciding which locations on the map you want to visit. You then read the paragraphs, the sections of text associated with that location. When you're ready to solve the mystery, you go to the end, you read some questions, you try to answer those questions, and then you open an envelope or read the solutions. And then typically there's a little epilogue where Sherlock Holmes will explain how he solved the case. So your time is spent solving two kinds of puzzles. One is deciding or trying to figure out the nature of the mystery, what actually happened, who could have done it, and why. And then the second part, the more mechanical part along the way, is figuring out where do we go to gather the evidence we need? And sometimes that requires thinking outside of the box. If someone was poisoned, you might think, well, maybe the poison was bought at a drugstore. Let's look up in the directory all the drugstores near the victim. Let's go visit those. The experience of playing the game, the feel of the game, is very much an old school analog reading experience. 99% of your time will be spent reading or reading and discussing with someone and thinking, but it's like reading a book. All of the cases are set back in the 1900s in England, in London. All of the cases for the 4 boxes or so of cases are set in London and in various locations in London, but they almost all use this map. So you'll spend a lot of time working on this map, and there's a real feeling of traveling back in time and space and learning sort of about the history and the personalities of the people. It's a divisive game. There are lots of people for whom this is the best board game experience they've ever had. It can be quite special, quite unique, and quite transportative to a different place in time. While other people think this is not a game. It's barely even a puzzle. They just don't like the unguided nature of the experience, and they don't like not having a time limit. Some people don't like it. It's well suited for solo play, but I think it's best at 2. It really does help and makes it easier to have someone to bounce ideas off of. And this is just a quick thumbnail sketch of the game. There's lots of videos by people who love the game, and you can watch playthroughs, etc. Okay, now let's talk about what's officially available for Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective. It was originally published in 1981. and has since been reprinted several times. The most recent reprints are by Space Cowboys. You can see here's the first box, The Thames Murders and Other Cases, but there are 4 big box expansions you can see behind me, each of which has about 10 cases. Each case might take you 2-3 hours, maybe even a little more if you really stuck with it. And you might pay $40-50 for a box. In addition to the 4 big boxes, there is one big expansion from the 80s that was never reprinted. That's Adventures by Gaslight, the yellow box behind me. And then a spin-off called Gumshoe, a big giant box of cases set in the 30s, sort of a film noir feel. And then there's a recent Lovecraft box of 5 cases, and then a game called Mythos Tales, a box of cases, not officially part of the canon, but inspired very much by the case. So there's a lot of official content here for this game. You can also watch hundreds of hours of playthroughs and reviews on this channel of the official content. But this video, the first of 2 videos on this subject, is to talk about the fan-made cases for Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective. So let's talk about that. There are about 3 dozen fan-made cases in English for this game. Many translated into other languages by volunteers, some only available in other languages written by people outside of America and England. Primarily, you'll find these fan cases on the Board Game Geek forum in the section for this first box, The Thames Murders. In the file section, there are a couple other cases sprinkled across the internet in different places. They're all in PDF format, suitable for printing easily on a printer or even playing on a tablet. They vary dramatically in quality, layout, style, length, and difficulty. They all do require you to have the base map from one of the base sets. All of the reprinted Space Cowboys boxes include a copy of the same map. And then the original games, which have a very different, larger styled map, the map basically hasn't changed since the 80s. You could use any map from any set and any directory from any set, but you will need those 2 parts. You won't in general need anything else. You could get digital versions of those if you had to, but I highly recommend you buy one of the base sets before you try playing any of the fan scenarios. You also need the list of informants, which is on the back of the rule book. However, you can also download, instead of the list of informants, you can download some fan-made cards for the informants. Informants are places you can go to talk to about to get general information like the medical examiner, etc. If you're playing a fan case, you should have some tolerance for some typos that occasionally sneak through, or some occasional grammatical errors. And you will have to do a little digging around to figure out which fan cases are the best, which ones are worth your attention. I'll come back to that in a second. However, in the age of the $300 deluxe Kickstarter games that are not well play tested and can feel overwhelming, this may be the antidote for you. Completely free print and play fan cases. And I'm going to tell you why I think these are so special and so different from other print and play games that you can find on the internet. Okay, so let's talk about what you'll need to play with one of these fan cases. You'll need a printer, of course, or if you really don't want to print these things out, you could use a tablet and a PDF reader and just play directly on your tablet, though I recommend printing it out. As I said, you'll need one of the official boxes so you have the map. If you're serious, I would highly recommend you pick yourself up a nice 3-ring binder and a 3-hole punch. 3-hole punch you can get for $10, binder even less. And some tabs. And what I've done here is I've got tabs for the different neighborhoods. In this particular game, the layout was by number, but essentially almost all of the games are organized by neighborhood, and having tabs will let you quickly print it. I don't keep the game in the binder after I finish it. I just use one binder for each case I'm going to play. I play the case, I put it in the binder, I play it, then I take it out and throw it away and slot in the next fan case that I play. You might also have a notebook and some cubes to track your movement on the map if you really want a deluxe experience. Now, let's get to the punchline about why these fan-made cases are so unusual compared to other free print and play games. You may be used to the idea, maybe you've tried downloading a print and play game at some point that someone's worked on. And what you'll experience in most cases for a sort of a board game in progress is that it can be a challenging experience. There can be tons of files to download. You've got to print all these different pieces, cut them out, assemble them, maybe laminate them, organize them, bag them, box them for replay. You need a color printer, you need heavy cardstock, etc. Whereas here, we've got a format that is absolutely perfectly suited to home printing and playing. You've basically got 1 or 2 PDF files. You just print them out on a black and white printer, and that's it. You're done. There's no cutting, no assembly, no laminating. You can use regular stock. You don't need a color printer. Very convenient. Next. Almost all print and play downloaded board game prototypes you might get create an unsatisfying experience compared to having a retail copy of the game. That is, when you print out your components for a board game with your tokens on your printer and you cut out the pieces or try to mount them even on good stock. I'm not knocking the experience. It can be quite fun to do, but in the end, you end up with something that almost certainly is going to sort of detract from the experience because the pieces will feel flimsy or won't look quite right. They can reduce the experience. Here, however, printing out a fan-made case basically gives you an almost identical experience in terms of the look and feel and experience that you get when you play an official case. An official case might have a nice slicker cover, but essentially all of your reading, all of your type is the same experience. You are essentially having an identical experience to if you bought it. In addition, the nature of these games is you play them once and then you're done, you never go back. Here, so you print out a case, you play it, and then it can go into recycling. Or it can go into a nice organized folder. So you don't have to build a box, you don't have to look at some ugly box on your shelf. It's very well suited to this format. Now, the third, which is the real dirty little secret here, the real special part of this, is that the truth is that the print and play versions are actually significantly better way to play the game than the official material. At least in one respect, couple respects. First of all, if you bind them in a nice binder, it's actually substantially more enjoyable to flip to where you need to go than using this booklet without tabs. You've got nice tabs to organize your sections. You've got a nice binder, feels nice to look at. It folds and opens flat on the table. And perhaps best of all, you can write on the pages. That might not seem like a big deal, but this is a game that demands taking notes, noticing things in paragraphs. And when we play these fan cases, we mark up the pages as we read them. Is this important? Circle it. Is this important? Highlight it. And that actually makes for a more enjoyable experience. And then lastly, a little bonus is that these downloadable PDFs are perfect for remote play. If you're looking for a game to play with a close friend that's across the seas, you both download the PDF, you both print it out, that's it. You've now both got a full copy, you can both have your map, you don't need to even see the other person. You could play completely over a phone. This really is a unique scenario for a print and play game that is actually arguably better than the real thing. Let's talk a little bit more about the special nature of fan-made cases, what to expect, and sort of what mindset to go into them. In general, it can be quite rewarding and fascinating to try a fan-made print and play board game of any sort. But typically, the investment and time required to download a board game prototype and print it out and assemble it can be quite prohibitive. But here you really have a chance to experience a work in progress, a prototype, an experimental piece of art, primarily in the form of written dialogue, that is super easy to get, to produce, to have in front of you, that will take you 2 or 3 hours. It's a one-time playthrough. It's not a commitment. And after those 3 hours, and we should say, no new rules to learn. It's a completely familiar system. Once you understand the basics of how to play Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, every fan case follows the same pattern. They essentially don't have any new rules for you to learn, so you can jump right in. You play it for 2 or 3 hours and you're done. You've had the experience like going to a movie. No more commitment. It doesn't even have to get stored on the shelf. And once you've had that experience and been one of the few people on the planet to experience this fan-made case made by one person who fell in love with the game and decided to try their hand at it, you've then experienced a little piece of art. Sometimes it'll work, sometimes it won't, sometimes there'll be things that didn't quite work for you. And guess what? The author of that case is going to be on Board Game Geek, dying to talk about their piece of their creation, and you will be in the position to offer some feedback about it. You'll be able to talk to the author, you'll post a little review, you'll be able to tell other people about whether you liked it, you didn't like it, what you thought worked best, and you'll find that the author is more than likely thrilled to have some feedback, to find someone else who's played the game. You'll be part of a very small community of people who have had the same experience. And it can be quite a nice feeling to be in this small community of people who have played this rare game. Okay, so some final thoughts, and you'll have to watch my second video on rounding up a couple of my favorite fan cases, but as general comments here. Something I haven't yet said is that some of the free fan-made cases are some of the best and most interesting cases ever written for the Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective system, better than the boxed games. They often, at least some of the ones I've focused on, can offer a longer, more in-depth experience. They don't suffer any of the traditional print and play drawbacks of print and play games. They're trivial to download and print, no assemblies required. They don't suffer drawbacks in terms of component quality, and they even have some real advantages in terms of being able to bind them with tabs and being able to write on the actual pages and take notes. If you're unsure of which of the fan-made cases, of the 3 fan-made cases to try. See my next video rounding up 5 of my favorites, and future videos I'll be playing through more of the fan cases. If you're feeling experimental, you can just pick one at random, find one of the lesser reviewed fan cases and just give it a try, and you'll at least have the advantage of experiencing a piece of art and being able to give some feedback to the author. If you do play a fan-made case, I really do encourage you to post your thoughts on the thread where the author has posted it. If you want to learn how to get better and maybe more accessories for playing these kinds of games, you might watch my video on Remedial Detective School for narrative mystery gamers. And you might consider watching my roundup of these fan-made cases. And after you play a case, you could watch my playthrough of that case. We've done playthroughs of a half dozen of these fan cases on YouTube in full, and then we review them afterwards. So you can play it and then you can see how you compare, how your experience compares to mine. I hope that's given you something to think about, and I'll see you on the next video. It's a pure, probably the most pure extant detective mystery game. No luck, no time limit. Let's start over. We don't need to try to sound so fancy.